Hey everyone, before we get to today's show, I have a quick message about something exciting that I have created just for you. If you're listening in January of 2020, I've just opened enrollment for my brand new Career Advancement Academy. This is a powerful 4-week class to jumpstart your job search or career transition. You're going to get one-on-one guidance from me personally, and you'll benefit from connecting with your peers. Group programs are a powerful way to make new connections, learn from other people's challenges, and build your own confidence. But you have to act now. Class runs from January 22nd to February 12th of 2020, and enrollment is going to close firmly on January 21st. You're going to get a full month of live training calls, plus a private one-on-one call with me, unlimited email support, and tons of bonuses. In just those 4 weeks, you are going to learn my proven 3-step job search process that has landed clients terrific new jobs. And you're going to learn how to answer the most common interview questions with confidence and authenticity. You're going to learn how to brand yourself for a career change and how to overcome age discrimination, the unemployment bias, whatever barriers you have in your job search. We are going to get through them. You're going to learn all of these things in just 4 weeks. So go to careeruprising.com, click on programs, then click on group programs and enroll. No phone calls needed. Just sign up right online on my website, careeruprising.com. Then go to group programs. I cannot wait to see you as one of my personal students in my Career Advancement Academy, but you have to sign up by January 21st. All right, let's get on with the show. Welcome to Career Uprising. I'm your host and professional career coach, Lorraine. Join me as I guide you through an amazing journey of self-discovery and empowerment. If you are looking for work, changing careers, or stuck in a toxic job, then this is the show for you. I offer both practical and spiritual guidance to help you up-level and advance your career. Let's start the uprising. Hey everyone, it's Lorraine. Welcome to what will be the first show of the new year. So this is episode 69, A Job, a Career, or a Calling. And I'm recording this now in December of 2019, but by the time your ears hear this, it will be 2020. And I'm so excited. It's a new year and a new decade, and this show is going to kick everything off for Career Uprising in 2020. And so I'm excited, and I've got so many good shows planned for you guys in the month ahead. I can't wait to unveil all of them. And I'm also contemplating some pretty big changes myself to my business model and my program options. And so there's a chance by the time you hear this that I might be announcing some big new things. So be sure to check them out on my website at careeruprising.com. Change is definitely something for you to embrace without a doubt. I know I do. And I usually take this opportunity around New Year's to freshen things up and ask myself, what do I want to change in my own career? So I would encourage you to ask that same question. So we're going to kick 2020 off with a big, hefty topic today, and it has often been said that our work falls into 3 categories: a job, a career, or a calling. And I'm fascinated with this concept, and I've kind of referenced it on other shows, and I touched on it maybe about a year ago, but I want to revisit it again today. And I also want to bring in some fresh perspectives. I haven't had an interview guest in a couple of months. Been doing a lot of solo shows and a lot of teaching, which I love to do. But I have actually not one, but two fantastic guests who are going to join me in just a moment. And I've never had two guests at once on the show, so it should be lively and maybe even a bit experimental, but that's okay, right? So in just a moment, I'm going to bring on Myles Eldreth and Mark Botros, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves for the most part. I'm sure they can tell their stories better than I can, and I'm not a fan of reading bios on air. I think it's lame, honestly. So we're just going to dive into the conversation, and I want to get their perspectives on this idea of what is work, how do we define it, and what does it mean to us? What is a job versus a career versus a calling, and can you have one or change from one to another? And these gentlemen, Mark and Myles, have just really diverse career experiences, yet in a cool way, both of them have so much crossover with me and what I do, which I think is so cool. So Mark is a speaker and a coach and a business leader, and Myles is a professional in government contracting, but also a teacher in higher education. So they both have a lot of diversity and a lot of great perspectives. And then jointly, Mark and Myles are business partners in their own business venture, Smart Village. So a lot of things going on, a lot of great perspectives that I can't wait to hear. And so what I'm going to do is go ahead and bring these guys on, and we're just going to dive in, and we're going to have an awesome conversation. So let me have you guys introduce yourselves. So welcome to both of you, Mark and Myles. And Mark, why don't we go first and just let you tell us just a little bit about you. Just a quick snapshot. What is your background? What do you do? And then we'll go to Myles after that.
First, Lorraine, thank you so much for having us both on. It's such a privilege to be able to help kick off this new year with you. And so I'm very, very grateful just to be on with you.
Well, thank you.
And it's funny. My career has actually been a real adventure, and it's over the last quarter century. I've taken on a variety of roles, and I've spoken on this a number of times, where I feel like I've created a career out of doing the jobs that no one else has wanted to do, and I've made a habit of that. And it's really afforded me some really interesting experiences. And over the course of the last 25 years, I've had the opportunity to consult with about 300 different organizations in a management consulting capacity. I co-founded a humanitarian nonprofit in around 2002, 2003. And I've since gotten back into consulting and even expanded that a little bit to do more one-on-one coaching and consulting for individuals and businesses. So I have a very diverse background. I don't have that traditional. I went to school for 4 years and then did an internship and then kind of went about my career that way. I really kind of bounced around and groped in the dark for a long time and kind of found my way through my career and have actually landed in a pretty pleasant place, all things considered. So that's just a little bit about my background.
I love that. Yeah, you've experienced a little bit of everything.
Indeed,
and we definitely don't all have that logical, sensical career path, like you said, where it's just kind of boom, boom, boom. I know I started out on that and then I majorly disrupted it when I started a business. So I can completely sympathize with that. That's awesome. So Myles, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? What do you do now and kind of what's been your story a little bit?
Well, in a way, it's very similar to Mark's. So first off, thank you again for having us both on. Mm-hmm. I used to be on a podcast. I kind of missed the medium, and I greatly appreciate the opportunity. So there's that, of course, and Happy New Year, everybody. And nice to kick it off with this. So my original aspiration was to be a teacher. I was a high school teacher for all of a year. I went to traditional school and kind of went that way, and it didn't work out for a myriad of reasons. It definitely wasn't the students. I had some misgivings about administrations and standardized testing and such. So I ventured back into the business world, going to try to get an MBA, and they were like, "Yeah, you need all these prereqs," and I was like, "What's a prereq?" I'm 20 years old, and I'm like, "What do you mean?" So I'd retake all these business classes, ended up getting another undergrad, and then went to graduate school. So 7-8 years later, I through that path landed into government contracting, and then in between there became an adjunct professor at a community college. I've been doing that for the past 10 years. So teaching is absolutely my passion. I get to do it in my full-time job, where I get to teach others, how to manage government contracts, the compliance side of things, program management, and all that stuff. And then I get to also bring people like you in, and Mark and others as well, and teach my students how to navigate the world outside of school, because no one talks about that. It's always like, what's the next class? Is this going to prepare me for Management 300 or whatever accounting class I have to take next? I'm like, you got to start thinking a little bit beyond that,
Right.
So that's kind of my biggest passion. I'm like, just here's these people that are doing things and that can tell you stuff that you wouldn't know otherwise. You would learn the hard way like we did, So that's kind of the twisting path I took.
Absolutely. And I've seen you with your students. I can tell you have a passion for it. Myles was kind enough to invite me and Mark to speak to his class. So we've all three kind of intermingled a little bit here, which is great. But yeah, I can appreciate that. We start out in one path, and then sometimes you have to just kind of let life guide you. I think I'm doing a lot of things now that I did not think I would ever be doing. So to some degree, I think we have control, and then to some degree, I think we have to kind of let life guide us and be open to changing. So let's think about this idea of what is a job versus a career versus a calling, and is it really even that simple, right? That we can just put everything into categories. I'm kind of fascinated with this. So let me just toss it out to both of you. What are your thoughts on this? Whether it's your own personal experience or just what you teach or coach, or what even just kind of at a high level, what do you guys think of kind of about that concept, and what does work mean, and how do we define it? And do we have a job, a career, or a calling, or is it really not even that simple? I'll toss it out to either one of you.
I think it's an awesome question, actually. And I think that, so we in Western society have a penchant for categorizing things, right? And so I like the categorization, actually, of something being a job, a career, or a calling. And I do see distinction between the three. I will say, so just from a definitional perspective, I think a job is a simple transaction. I give you something of value, my time, my skill, my intellect, in exchange for something that you give me of value. And in our society, we equate that to usually money. A career I would define as a journey of experience, discovery, and even development within a given field, or perhaps in my case, a number of different fields. And then I would define a calling as essentially doing what God put you on this earth to do. And I find that having a calling is actually a lot more rare than a job or a career. When you have a calling, you have a calling because this is where we find our purpose and our passion in the work that we do. In fact, like Myles, teaching, I get to go and speak on occasion, like you, Lorraine, and it's something that I do for free, and I would do it for free or even paid to do it if need be. Time flies by and you're energized and you're turned on and your fire is lit and work doesn't feel like work. And I think that a calling is really kind of a manifestation of who they are as a person. Like, for example, a nurse is a manifestation of someone who is a caregiver, or a police officer or a fireman is a manifestation of someone who is by nature a protector. So I think the calling is really I mean, just really manifesting who we truly are internally, and I think, I think Myles is a really great example of finding a calling in this world. And he's found that in teaching. For me, I can say that I've had all three in my life. I've had jobs before where I just showed up, earned money, and I gave my time and skill and intellect in exchange for that. Right now, I will say that I have had times in my life where I've had a calling, where I was quite literally doing what God put me on this earth to do, and I found purpose and passion, and it was an amazing experience. That was years ago, actually, when I was doing more nonprofit work. And I've had a career, kind of all my life, as sort of a steady state all my life. But I think that I'm not in a job right now. I can say that. And am I in my calling? I would say I'm close. I'm as close to a calling as you can get in a career framework. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, yeah. So I would say I'm very much in a career, and it's good.
That, right.
It's good.
Sure.
It's a journey. Yeah, it's a journey. It's an experience. It's discovery. I'm developing. I'm growing. I enjoy it. In my career, I work as a kind of a managing consultant for Caliber Systems, which is a management consulting firm here in the Washington, D.C. area. And I get to manage a team, and I get to do functionally something I really love to do, which is instructional design. Similar to teaching, but it's more the back end of teaching. It's basically the design of courseware. And so it's like not even like work. So I feel like I flirt with having a calling, but it's definitely within the framework of a career. So that's how I sort of differentiate the three. I'm definitely not in a job. I think you just show up, you get paid, and you go home, and there's nothing beyond that. But I think I'm sort of touching both, and I think in my coaching and consulting work, that's where I feel like, again, it's the kind of work I feel like I'm touching on that calling, doing what God put me on this earth to do. It's the passion and purpose of helping someone navigate their career or their life or some major decision or a business trying to navigate a major strategy or a major change. That to me is a calling. So I feel like I'm experiencing both right now.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah, I feel like for me, I think that it's very fluid. And I think that there are maybe a lot of people out there who feel like, well, if I'm not really passionate about what I do and I'm doing something to pay the bills, is there something wrong with that? Or am I missing something? Or did I miss the boat? I missed my calling, or something like that. And
Right.
I think that sometimes we have a calling, but it's not always our job. It's not always in a professional sense. We may find it elsewhere through hobbies or other passions that we have. So I guess in my mind, I want people to know that, you have a passion, you have a calling, you have something there, but you don't always have to make a career out of it. It can show up in other places in your life, and it doesn't mean that you've missed your calling or anything like that. I think it's something that's fluid and something that evolves. But Myles, I'd love to hear from you. What are your thoughts on this and your experiences throughout your career?
It's interesting because I kind of landed where I started, but in a different place. My experience in higher education kind of happened on a whim, and one of the reasons I preach networking so much is because of how I got my teaching job. The one I have now, not the original one, but it was just me talking to a professor who's now a friend of mine, who I was like, hey, I kind of be interested in teaching college. What do you think? And he was like, hey, come over here. He walked me over to the dean and said, hire him. And I was like, what's going on? What? So the dean sat me down, asked me a couple hard questions, and said, here's a syllabus. Here's an example of fifth syllabus. I'm going to throw you in a Biz 100 class. Go at it. And I was like, oh, so this is happening now. So from then on, as soon as I stepped in front of that classroom, I love that one of our mutual friends, Carl, always says this, like Carl Gales, a person I've had speak in my classes multiple times. He says, try to get your butterflies to fly in formation. Well, my butterflies were flying out my eyeballs, for the most part, the first class. But as I went through more and more, as I connected with the students, as I felt what I was doing was really, providing some value, which is like the first time I had ever felt like that working. I was like, this is it. Whatever divine providence there is, put me here to do this. I am here to help people. I'm good at it. I went through most of my life mired in negativity and all this other stuff due to, family issues and other things. And not having any drive, I would say. But it's like I kind of reversed into it in a way where I was like, okay, this is what I need to do. And it was almost like whatever, put me in that place was like, okay, I'm just going to push you over here, and this is what you do. This is who you are. And it just fit. It fit like a glove. It's crazy. So now, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Okay. My full-time job, I landed in government contracting after working in education for years. I used to work at higher education in the for-profit sector as a counselor, so I learned all about that. I got referred into Northrop Grumman years ago by a friend and ended up in government contracts, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to dive deep and figure out what this is all about, and I enjoy it. Got a really good team where I work. They treat me like a family, and I'm part of a family. I like that. The work itself, and Mark can tell you he does a much more exciting side of government contracts than what I do, but I still enjoy it. Would I call it a calling? No, but I would call it a career. So I've got this weird balancing act, where I have my calling, but my career supports it and says, go out and teach, go out and help others. We're going to give you the time to do that. And I think that's awesome, because that's rare. Some employers are going to be like, no, you got to stick with us. You can't do any of this extra stuff. Don't go do charity work because we want you in the office 90 hours a week or something, right? I've been blessed where I don't have to worry about that.
I like that. I like that you've made a hybrid situation because I think there's a lot of people out there who might think it's all or nothing, right? Or if I'm not doing that thing I really want to be doing full time, then it's not enough, or I haven't succeeded at it in some way. And that kind of goes back to what I'm saying about, well, you can make it look like whatever you want. You can make this calling be a job or not, full time or part time, in addition to something that pays the bills or the whole only thing that pays the bills. It can look like whatever you want. There's no right or wrong. And so I think you're a great example of how you can still have that calling and have that passion, that thing that you love to do, but you're nobody's fool. You also pay the bills too, right? Like you can do both. Right. Absolutely. And that's not wrong or right. That's just what you choose and what works for you. And should there come a day where you change that? Maybe you will, maybe you won't. I think that people should feel empowered to just let it be what it is at that moment. And if it evolves, great. And if not, that's okay too. But you're where you're supposed to be doing what you're supposed to be doing. You are. Yeah. We all are.
And on the flip side, unfortunately, there's a lot of part-time teachers that do it for the paycheck, just because of that, because maybe they need the money because we live in a high-cost area, and that shows. It shows when there's somebody sitting in front of a class droning through a PowerPoint. It shows when it's like they're not even passionate about their own subject. Why would the students care if they don't care? Right. I'm very aware if I get into that rut, because I'm like, why am I here if I'm not here for them? Why does this college exist if it's not for them? It's not for prestige. Better not be, at least. It's not for any of this other stuff. It's to take all of these students and better their lives so we have a better society. At least that's supposed to be the mission, right? And I'm very passionate about that because I'm like, look, if I can take a modicum of my success and you can borrow from it, and become more successful than me, whatever that means to you, that is where I win. I love having students come back to me like 5 years later. I got my master's degree. I'm working for Deloitte or whatever. I'm like, awesome. That's excellent.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful.
So nothing better.
And that level of passion, Lorraine, that Myles brings to the classroom has been rewarded over and over and over again. I mean, if you go on like, ratemyprofessor.com, he's like consistently and, 10 out of 10 or 5 out of 5. Yeah. I'm going to brag on you for a moment. And
we're all going to go to that website now and check you out, Myles.
You just Google me. It's the first thing that comes up.
and he's consistently highly rated, in not just within the school, but publicly as well. But also he's also received like Teacher of the Year. How many years in a row, Myles? I don't know how many years, but it was like multiple years where he received like Teacher of the Year. His passion has really shown. Like it's really shown that this is his calling, that this is what he's meant to do.
Fantastic.
It's interesting too, because people. I've been told in interviews and jobs I didn't get, in some cases teaching, that it's like you need to brag about yourself more, right? In this career, like we talked about this, Lorraine, right? Like I live like the humble pie game, big time, where I'm like, if somebody isn't producing, I don't care what's coming out of their mouth, or any of that other stuff, or not producing. If they're not there's this awesome Simon Sinek video I put up on LinkedIn that was about success and trust and production and all this. It was excellent. And I was like, this is absolutely what I believe. And I was like, just because you are producing, but if you're not a trustworthy person and whatever that is, so that's, I think, the biggest. It's like, you give me all the awards in the world, but if I lose that passion, if I ever go a modicum below of where I am now, then I will stop teaching, because I'll feel it myself, because I'll notice it's just not the output that I expect of myself.
I love that. You have high standards. That's good. Excellent. Wonderful. So what is, so for each of you, I want to ask Mark, so maybe for you in the coaching that you do, or in the speaking that you do, what is some general career advice that you have given to people? I don't know if you coach people, who are going through maybe a career transition or kind of pondering what they want to do or anything like that. But have you run across that in any of your business? And what advice do you usually get to people who are maybe at a crossroads or trying to figure out who they are professionally?
I think that what I've given in terms of advice, or just in terms of coaching or speaking, is when a person is at a crossroads, I think the first thing that they need to deal with is they need to deal with their fear. They need to find a way to channel it or do something with that fear and not let it cripple them. Because when they reach that crossroads, they can either they have choices in front of them. They can either stay where they are, which is a choice, right? Or they can go any one of a number of directions. I find that the thing that prevents people from really making really brave moves is their fear. And I think that's the big thing that I find that people need to deal with first is that, just kind of, and how, whatever, we've come up with a variety of different strategies on how to do that, appreciating the fear, kind of get, embracing it, getting our, butterflies flying in formation, as Myles said earlier, putting our fear in perspective that, this is not the first time we've ever felt it. We need to, at least listen to its warning. And if the reward is greater than the risk, then, go for it. So I think that the thing that I really work through with people is working through that initial fear. Beyond the fear, making decisions is a very, it can be a very structured process, and people make decisions, in any one of a number of ways, like they can do pros and cons lists and to-do lists and, six hat thinking, or what I, personally do a weighted pros and cons list, with weighted scoring. I mean, it's actually pretty complex, but I think that, when I work with folks, we work through fear, we figure out the decision-making mechanism, We lay out the criteria, and then we kind of lay out what the next steps are. Figuring out figuring out where do you want to be. Where are you? Where do you want to be? How do we get there? And figuring out the strategy. It's pretty. I would say it's fairly straightforward, actually, when people come to a crossroads. But I think that they need to deal with the emotions that they have up front. Whether that's fear or perhaps anger, if they're in a toxic situation, or annoyance or frustration or whatever. I think they have to sort of settle that, within themselves, get resolved about that, and then they can move on. And so that's usually what I find. And actually, I think one of the things that I've noticed about your work is that you really do tackle in your practice. You really do tackle that. You have a beautifully elegant blend of new thought and new thinking, or progressive thinking, combined with career, and that's actually very rare. So I would probably say that if I come across someone, I'll say, you know what, you might want to talk to Lorraine Rice.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, and I can appreciate what you're saying about fear, because we talk a lot about that with my clients and on my show, because I think that a lot of times fear is what's holding people back, and they don't know it. They don't recognize it. They may think, oh, well, I can't do this because I don't know what the right thing is. I don't have clarity. Well, a lot of times lack of clarity is really fear of just making a choice, right? Fear of making a mistake and just not choosing a path. So I think that fear disguises itself as other things, and we don't realize that the basic emotion there that we're experiencing is that we are afraid of something. Anytime you have resistance to anything in your life, there is a fear behind it, guaranteed, every time. But we don't always know that. So I thank you, and I can appreciate what you're saying about that. I think that that's absolutely true.
I vehemently agree.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're both coaches. We get it. Myles, go ahead. What career advice do you give to your students, maybe in their career path?
Well, some of it comes from you all, obviously, when you come and speak to my classes. So a lot of it is parroting that. But ultimately, I'm just like, you have to take some chances. You have to realize that the work world changes every 5 seconds. You've got to think about that, but also not be freaked out by it. Because the students I have are digital natives. They know systems way better than most of us do, at the age we're at. I also keep telling them to understand they need to learn from older folks, and understand, because they will one day need to succession plan, which our society is terrible at. We're just like, oh, everybody just retires, and then you just plop a bunch of exennials or whatever in there instead of properly training them for those jobs. So I'm like, you need to find a mentor. Right. That's the biggest thing I go after. I was like, I was lucky enough to find my mentor in government contracting, Kitty Klaus, at HP when Mark and I worked together. And I kind of just fell into it, where, again, she created a job for me. I had never had that done. And it was a bunch of tough love, because she is no nonsense. She's from that generation. But I respected every second of it. She looked at me one day and she said, your generation can't take criticism. And I was like, well, I personally can, so I need you to give me constructive criticism, because how am I going to know otherwise if I'm doing stuff incorrectly? If I'm navigating this crazy political landscape, and, I'm talking like work politics, incorrectly. Because that was one of the most valuable skills she taught me. Even Lorraine, down to how to correctly write an email. I spend so much time walking through the stupid emails I get on a daily basis, or just things like that. Not from students, but from coworkers who obviously either are too busy or aren't taking the time, because that reflects very poorly on you. Mm-hmm. Where I'm like, you need to organize your thoughts, just everything under the sun, because the classes I teach are so incredibly career focused, and I love it that way because it keeps me up on everything. Then I get to bring you all in and brag about you.
Oh, thank you. Mm-hmm. Definitely. Well, so what is, so we'll wrap it up in a minute here, but I want to know from each of you, what is the best career advice that you have been given? So Mark, can you think of anything that comes to mind that anyone's shared with you or advised you?
That's an amazing question, because I think there's so many bits of advice that that I've been given over the years. I think that perhaps the one that keeps recurring in my mind is that we can't be afraid to fail. And we were talking about fear earlier, and fear for me is a fear of failure, or a fear of mediocrity even, or some other kind of fear of it not being perfect. And I think that lesson keeps coming up for me over and over again, that failure is a better teacher than success. But don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, because oftentimes we're so paralyzed by perfection and needing to get it right instead of just getting it done, right? So I think for me, just not being, don't be afraid to fail. That for me is the consistent lesson that I keep learning over and over again, and keep reminding myself of that. I will fail. I will make mistakes. I will likely have to apologize. I will rub somebody the wrong way sometime, but I can always learn from it, and I can always get better as a result.
Fabulous. Fabulous. Myles, what about you? Best career advice?
Two quick ones. The first one I could think of is stop coming to me with questions and come to me with scenarios or potential answers.
I like
because I naturally ask a lot of questions, and I did this to my previous boss that I just talked about. I actually had a little composition notebook called Kitty Stuff that I wrote things in every time she talked, and I showed it to her the other day, and she was trying not to cry about it because she just was awarded a Lifetime Acquisition Achievement Award, and I'm so proud of her, for that. I nominated her for that. But, I was like, here's the book that has all the things, all these questions I asked you, but she gave me, that's one of the best pieces of advice, because you can think of scenarios that might be answers, instead of just throwing questions at somebody. The second one that I would tell everybody is positivity. And I unfortunately was raised in a very negative environment by a very negative person who no doubt loved me more than anything, but could never express it. It's kind of like Livia Soprano, if you want to think of it in that sense, but without trying to murder me. But,
right.
Not the mob mom, but just the negativity. You could tell the love was there. So as an example, Mark mentioned one of those awards. I was given the Outstanding Service to the College Award, which I was the only adjunct chosen for that in 2014. So my name was on the board for like a month, which was nice and embarrassing. My mom drove her friends out there every day and showed them. It was like, look, my son's name was up there. But then when she looked at me, she said, "You're only a good teacher because you like being the center of attention." And I was like, who? What? But I knew the love was there. But for a good part of my life, I was just negative. I was cynical. I was always just making fun of things. And it's good to do that sometimes, and I still do. But I try to be much more positive in my outlook and my interactions with people. I say thank you a lot. And it with my daughter, with my wife, everything. And it helps me greatly.
Wonderful. And I'll answer the question myself also. I will say the best advice I've been given was not from a person directly given to me, but there is an author who I've been heavily influenced by, Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote Eat, Pray, Love, and many other things. That's what she's famous for, but she's actually written things even beyond that. But she was giving us a speech once, and she was talking about curiosity and how curiosity is such an underrated characteristic. And it's, it's kind of something that we associate with kids. Oh, kids are curious, but we lose it as grownups. And I don't think we should. I think that curiosity will take you amazing places. And I know for me, if I had never been curious enough to ask the question, could I be a coach? What would that look like? I don't know. Could I own a business? Would people sign up? Would they pay? I don't know. I'm willing to try. I'm willing to be curious. I'm willing to fail, like you said, Mark, and see where it goes. And I think the heart of all of that is curiosity, is simply asking questions of yourself and of life, and not being afraid to not have it work out because you were just curious. You wanted to know, right? So I think that's how we progress in life and take risks and take chances. And she really just shed a light on that to me. I never really thought about curiosity as being something that I needed to adopt or pay attention to. But now I do. Now I do. And I'm very awakened to that I want to know what I'm curious about. And I want to ask new questions of myself and of life and just run experiments and see where things go with really no attachment to what the outcome is. Cause it's not really even about that. It's just about asking the question and learning and expanding. And so I embrace curiosity now. And I talk about it a lot on my show as well. So
that's beautiful.
Well, thank you. So
yeah, I think that's an excellent sentiment.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So yeah, I can't take credit for that. I love Elizabeth Gilbert, and she's got a great book out there called Big Magic: Creative Living Beyond Fear. Do you know that one?
I read it. Yeah, it's awesome.
It's a really good one.
Awesome.
Really good one. Well, so let's wrap this up, but I want to thank you guys so much for taking the time to do this. I really just have a lot of respect for both of you. There's so much difference, but yet so much crossover in what we do. And I think it's been a great conversation, but how can audiences potentially connect with either one of you? So I want you each take a moment to share, whether it's a website, your LinkedIn, what can listeners do if they like what they hear and they want to connect with you further? Mark, would you want to start?
I think for me, the easiest way to connect is through LinkedIn. There are a few ways. One's through LinkedIn. I'm also on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I also have a fledgling podcast called LifeWorks, and that's on iTunes. And I do have a website, and it's markabotros.com.
Wonderful. Myles?
Yeah, his podcast is excellent. Go listen to it.
It is. I've listened to it as well. Mm-hmm.
Our plan is to eventually do a dual podcast actually together, he and I,
right,
as a component of Smart Village called What About Work? We are working on that. So we'll get you to guest on that. But
yes.
People can find me, mainly LinkedIn. That's the easiest way to do it. Just look for Myles Eldreth, Myles. My name's very unique. You will find me by Googling me. That's a blessing and a curse. But I'd be happy to connect.
Mine too.
Yeah, right. You connect and provide advice, network, whatever.
Yes. Okay. Wonderful. Well, thank you both for taking the time. I know this was a great conversation. I think a lot of value for my listeners, and I love bringing in fresh perspectives. And first show of the year, and first time I had two guests at once. So it's been a good show. Thank you guys. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think we got off to a good start to my listeners, and I'm grateful to all of my listeners. In fact, I just found out we hit 10,000 downloads. So I'm super excited about the growth of this show. So thank you all.
That's
to
awesome.
The listeners.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's just grown and grown. Every month is like more and more and more. And so I'm very grateful to all of my listeners. And I will be back next week with another guest, a fellow career coach. So I think that'll be a great show as well. But until then, I wish you all a wonderful new year. And I will talk to you guys next time. That's it for today's show. Thank you so much for listening. If you like what you heard today, please consider giving the show a positive review on iTunes. It would mean a lot to me, and it would help to spread the word so that others can learn about the show. Thanks again for tuning in, and I can't wait to connect with you again next time on Career Uprising.
This show is brought to you by InflowRadio.com, the best curated talk radio network for personal development, wellness, spirituality, and conscious business.